I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all of the difference. There are many secrets and mysteries in this world, strange places and events that call out to us to explore and investigate. These realms of the unknown and the unexplained are waiting for us, just over the horizon and down a dark road. Join your host, Dennis Carroll and Gerald Fountain, as we take the road less traveled. Good evening out there in podcast land, ladies and gentlemen. This is another episode. Yes, it is another episode of The Road Less Traveled. And tonight we're on the road to ancient Egypt, right here in this country. Okay, absolutely. I want to welcome you all aboard. It has been one heck of a week, has it not? Definitely. And it's just gotten started good. Absolutely. That was quite a weekend, definitely. And but hope you all are doing great out there. And I've got a fellow traveler to pick up along the way here, Mr. Gerald Fountain.
Howdy.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
How's life treating you?
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's good.
Busy,
You're
but
staying
good.
out of trouble, right? That's always a good goal.
Yep, trying to.
Yep. Sometimes, though, trouble comes looking for you. That's the problem. Absolutely. But anyway, yeah, it's been quite a weekend there, and quite an emotional weekend too in many aspects. We had a funeral, national funeral, I guess you would say, almost, to attend. It was like I kind of agree with the president. It was kind of like an old-fashioned revival a little bit too.
Right.
And but I'm sure that Charlie would have really liked that. Definitely, would have been pleased with that. Definitely, but yeah, a lot of things going on in the country there, Gerald. A lot of stuff going on. You know, I mentioned that the other day. A lot of people don't realize it, but I think without a doubt, in some ways, we are definitely even engaged in a civil war in this country. Two ideologies opposed to each other. And I think what's going on with one of them, and I'm not going to get political tonight, Lord help us, okay? I'm not going to do that, but one group is sort of losing its grasp on reality and sort of losing its hold politically, and I think they're desperate to do anything to retain their power. So when you get desperate, guess what else you get? Dangerous, okay? And don't ever forget that.
Wow.
Definitely. That's why they used to call the old outlaws desperados. Okay, but that's the way that goes, definitely. But tonight we're going to change. We're going to turn our attention, hopefully, to ancient Egypt, girl.
Yeah.
And ancient Egypt, right here in this country. Okay, we got a lot to talk about that. Some weird stuff we're going to get into. We need to be doing this podcast from the Grand Canyon. Okay, that's what.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Huh?
Yeah, that would be. I've always wanted to investigate the Grand Canyon. There's supposed to be a lot of hidden secrets in mysterious areas in the Grand Canyon, and one of them, of course, is that very famous story about the guy that stumbled upon a hidden cave in the Grand Canyon and found supposedly ancient Egyptian artifacts in caves, like statues and uh,
Yeah.
even I think mummies were supposed to find. Now I got a mummy in my closet. I should have brought him out, but anyway, most people got skeletons. I got mummies. Okay,
Uh,
they never go away. Okay, Joe. Skeletons may go away, but mummies never go away. That's the bad thing
yeah.
about them. But anyway, um, there's a lot of weird stories out there about this, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And to me, it's a fascinating story when you think about it. What if they actually did um, make it to this country and actually leave some kind of signs? And there have been not just a few, a good many different things left, supposedly artifacts and stuff like
Right.
that over a period of time. Here's the thing about, and I'm just going to mention this before I turn it over to you here, but um, science and archaeology will tell you the Egyptians could, although they were seafaring people, they could not build ships supposedly that would go across the Atlantic or the Pacific, whichever direction you were coming from. Uh, that they did not have seaworthy ships like that. But I don't know because I think we tend to write ancient man off when we shouldn't, because I think they were a lot more intelligent than we think they were, and we just don't know all of his history. Is still a mystery. That's what
Right.
I find so interesting about it. It's still a mystery.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what do you think? Have you've looked into this subject a good bit, and I think you did a show on it one time, did you not?
Yeah, I've done actually. Me and Jane Chiro Sounds have done several shows on what we found digging into
Mhm.
this subject, and we've been on Esoteric Atlanta, Jessica's show, your show. I think we've mentioned it. So we've traveled the Grand Canyon and Mississippian
Mhm.
Valley.
Mhm.
I mean, Little Egypt is what Southern Illinois, where we live. Right below where we live is Cahokia Mounds, and
That wouldn't
they
be
call
close
they
to
call that
Cairo.
area Little Egypt.
That wouldn't be close to Cairo, Illinois, would it, Gerald?
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there he is. Tell us a little bit about what's how Illinois is connected with that.
Well, it's the Mississippian Valley where the mound builders were, and there was supposedly a civilization there before the mound builders because even Native Americans talk about how there was a previous people here before us. We don't know who they are or where they came from or where they went, but they left behind buildings and structures and tools, and they implemented it into their culture. And just like in South America, most of these places or people built on top of ruins that were already here.
Absolutely, but a lot of people and since we do call the Mesoamerican pyramids, they kind of get them mixed up with Egyptian. There's a big difference between the Mesoamerican pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids, because the Mesoamerican pyramids, by the way, folks, were temples. They weren't like the pyramids supposedly are. Now a lot of people still argue about this, but the Egyptian pyramids supposedly were burial chambers or actual tombs. I don't know about that myself. I have my doubts a little bit about that as well. But
Right.
anyway, um, that's very interesting, Gerald, because supposedly the fellow that found all that in the Grand Canyon, he found, of course, like we said, artifacts, and he found writings and all that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, what you're talking about was there some kind of petroglyphs connected to that, or what? What was that in Illinois? There
Well, Illinois
was it.
has the let me think the Piazzo bird, which is supposed to be a thunderbird, and it was kind of drawn out or depicted like an Egyptian thunderbird type, and that's it. That's right there in Alton, Illinois, close to Cairo and Monk's Mound.
Also like a phoenix, right?
Yeah,
sort of like the phoenix. Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking up, doing some research on this tonight. Actually, I found about a rock in I think it's eastern Kentucky, and it's called the Witness Stone. And yeah, Egypt. That's from Cairo, Illinois, right?
Yeah,
Egypt, Illinois. Yeah.
The whole southern part of Illinois is called Little Egypt. That's what's weird. It's just not like It's just not like Cairo. It's like the whole area is Little Egypt.
It's called Little Egypt, right? Little Egypt.
Yep, Little Egypt.
Yeah. Well, you remember the very famous gangster movie Little Egypt? That was what they called that part of Illinois. That was where some gangsters supposedly came out, and that was the Edward G. Robinson movie, by the way. Might have to show that on your movie channel sometime. Little Egypt. And anyway. That's where that come from, actually, yeah. But that rock I'm talking about in Kentucky is called the Witness Stone, and I didn't get a picture of it because it really wouldn't have done you any good to get a picture of it because you'd have to be right up on the rock to get the petroglyphs off of it. But it supposedly has this rock that's been known for a long time. I think it was there when the Cherokee went on the Trail of Tears. That was back in the 1830s, okay? They knew about this. Anyway, the Cherokee knew about this rock. And this rock, recently, I think in 1994, it fell off the side of the mountain and went down on the highway. And they picked the rock up and took it to a park. They got a park for it now. You can go there and actually see it. It was on the National Historical Registry. You can go see this. And it's got like 5 or 6 different languages carved on this thing.
Wow.
And one of them says it is Egyptian, and it gives praise to Amun-Ra, and it says it was put there by the Nile voyagers.
Oh my.
So that is a very direct tie, and this is in Egyptian language, okay, folks?
So that's like the Rosetta Stone then.
Yeah, in Kentucky. It's a great big rock. It's about 20 foot long and about 5 foot high, something like that. Anyway, there's other things. There's Hebrew, ancient Hebrew on this rock. There's a Nubian language, which comes out of Africa, on this rock. You need to look it up, folks. It is a fascinating study. But there's like 5 or 6, I think is 5 or 6, I think it's even Spanish or something on this rock. So you need to check it out. It's very interesting, but it's called the Witness Stone. And it's very much like the Judd-Kula rock, which I have been to. It's in North Carolina. It has petroglyphs on it, and a lot of it cannot be figured out, just like this stone. And according to what, there is another stone in Kentucky that's the companion stone to this on the other side of the Red River.
Really?
Redbird River is called. It's on the other side.
Wow.
So this Redbird River was a pretty good river. In other words, it would be one you would navigate if you were out exploring, and all that. It's fascinating stuff, folks. Absolutely. What we got here, Joe?
This is the keystone that was found in a complex or a pyramid, if you will, or a mound in Ohio. And it has Hebrew on it. And we all know the biblical story of Egypt and the Hebrews. And so why would there be a stone with the law of the Lord, Holy of Holies, King of Earth inscribed on a stone?
Well, that's what on that stone I'm talking about. It says on there, to the glory of Yahweh or something like that. And it's ancient Hebrew, which is very much like that right there.
But there was all kinds of artifacts found there in the Ohio. There was even a box of purple compound to make purple dye, purple color for clothes. So why would that be in America when when we know in biblical times, Lydia was the purveyor of purple, and it was very expensive to have purple. Doesn't fit in with the Native Americans or any of it.
I think the Egyptians were about the only ones that actually had purple for a long time, and it came from bugs that were raised on the mountain Isles. Somehow knew that's how they got the color for that. So it would not have been easily acquired in the New World. Definitely not. And Gerald, looking at this, you got to wonder about the rumors and legends that part of some of the American Indian tribes may have been the lost tribes of Israel. If they had been, they would have had something just like that probably on hand. They would have had something, passed down.
Yeah, we know the Hopi Indians that Kincaid, when he went to the Grand Canyon, became friends with and talked to, and they have a lot of symbols and a lot of their language is as Egyptian style, and some of it a little bit of Hebrew, but mostly Egyptian in their language. So why would a Native American tribe in the Grand Canyon have Egyptian and maybe Hebrew in their language?
Well, here's something else that now science will tell you. Oh no, there's no connection and all that. Lost tribes of Israel and all that, but they can't explain the DNA. The DNA of some American Indian tribes is very close to that of, guess what? The Hebrew DNA. Okay, it's not enough to really substantiate saying that is exactly what it is, but it is pretty darn close. And they can't explain that. Here's what really bugs me about science, Gerald. I'm not going on a rant here, but it really bugs me about them. They got all this evidence, but yet they overlook. Oh no, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. There's very few artifacts. There's very few stuff. Nothing that we found connects that. How could you not see that? I mean, that's crazy. Science is not only blind, but it's deaf and dumb too, folks. Absolutely. Africa was the kingdom of the world for a long period of time, extremely serious seafaring. And it wasn't just the Nubian people of Africa. There were different races of people in Africa that did different things. They had different civilizations. They had different boats. They had different seafaring stuff. It's not that far-fetched that some of them could not have made it here as well. And there was a big connection with Egypt and Nubia, as they call Nubia, which was the old name of, guess what, Gerald? Ethiopia. Okay. Oh. Anyway, they had a big connection with them. They got a lot of their slaves from Ethiopia, a lot of slaves, black slaves in Egypt. But they had a connection with them militarily wise as well. So, that might be a lot of the African influence where that comes from too, as well. See what I'm saying? If put it this way, if Egypt had come to the United States or to the Americas, they would have brought their slaves with them. So you would have had Nubians, you would have had Africans with you too. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there is all kinds of races and skin color inside of Native Americas, just in North America. I mean, you have everything from white to red to black to, you name it. The Native Americans have it. So, was there more than one culture mixed in with our Native Americans?
And something to this day, DNA wise, there is more Scottish blood in most of the Indian tribes than there is Indian blood. Did you know that, Drew?
No, I did not know that.
DNA wise, yeah. Especially now we're talking about the East Coast Indians, okay? The East Coast. The West Coast is a little bit different. But that's why these people have taught, and we've talked about this before. There is a history, folks, before the known history of the Americas that we don't know anything about, and even the Native Americans didn't know that much about. So there you go.
There you go.
Anything. And that's what I said. I meant to look this up, and I forgot to do it. You would find this very interesting picture that they actually supposedly found these statues in South America, and it was like statues, like the head statues, not the whole thing, but just the head. And there were like 6 different heads, and 4 or 5 of them were different races that they would never have known anything about. Oriental races, black races, white races, all that different from what would have been in America. You know,
Wow.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm gonna have to look that up and let you see that. That's wild. I can't remember the name of it. It has a name, but they thought that might also have a connection to Atlantis as well.
Wow.
Here's the thing about Atlantis, and I'm not going to tie. We're not going to talk about that tonight because that's definitely food for thought, though. But Atlantis, if it had been a big seafaring nation as it was supposed to, as it was described by legend, it would have been a hub for commerce from all over the world.
Right.
That's something to think about. Yeah. What we got here, Gerald? That's the obelisk. Is that the Egyptian obelisk?
It is. It's actually in Central Park in New York. And it came here supposedly in the 1800s. And it's an actual Egyptian obelisk. It's not just a wannabe. It's not a replica. It is the real thing. And it's in the middle of Central Park in New York.
There's a companion to that in London, is there not?
There is an identical obelisk, this twin sister.
I heard the other day, and this makes me mad when I think about it, because I love archaeology. They actually had a 3,000-year-old Egyptian bracelet that came out of one of the pharaoh's tombs, and some idiot stole that thing and melted it down for the gold.
That's probably what happened to a lot of the missing artifacts.
That antiquity was worth far more than the gold you get out of it. That's crazy. But people, I don't know. But the British and the Americans, but the British were more about stealing artifacts than we were. I think that was like John Astor or somebody brought that over, didn't he? Or some very rich millionaire.
Yeah, I don't know. I know back in the Victoria era, it was very popular for rich socialites to go to Egypt and to bring back mummies and sarcophaguses and all kinds of jewelry and gold, and they would have parties in their parlor and show off to their wealthy friends the mummies, that they brought back from Egypt.
Mummy parties
in the parlor.
Yeah. They had a fascination with ancient Egypt. The Victorian people did. Victorian era. They were very fascinated with that stuff. I wouldn't mind having one of those Egyptian sarcophagus hanging out here, make a phone booth out of it or something. But anyway, that would be neat. But yeah, they had all kind of stuff like that. Matter of fact, Sherlock Holmes had a case about a mummy that was actually a curse of a mummy. And they come to find out that whenever you opened the sarcophagus up, there was a little needle there. And it would stick you and give you, that was the curse. It would, you thought you would die afterwards. You'd have a heart attack or something, but it would stick you with a poison.
Right.
Every time you open, and yeah, he figured it out, But
look at how many people passed away or died when they first found the Valley of the Kings and started excavating the tombs.
Yeah. It was amazing. Look how, weatherized that is. You can see the different layers of sediment and rock, all that sandstone,
Right. And the funny thing about this in the Grand Canyon, why did they name them the Isis Temple and Cheops Pyramid? And why was that the names given to them?
It makes you wonder. It really does. Why would they do that, That's strange. The Temple of Isis. Fascinating stuff. Now, right in there somewhere, supposedly, where that cave was found with Egyptian artifacts in it and all that. And supposedly, folks, now, whether that's true or not, the Smithsonian covered this up too, supposedly. That to this day, they know where the cave is and all that. Now, there's an interesting story too about, and I think I sent the newspaper clipping to you, Gerald, about these Boy Scouts that found a Sphinx in America.
Yeah.
And that does look like a the bottom half of the Sphinx, does it not?
It does in the Grand Canyon. That's why I brought that up. And the bottom picture is just a picture to kind of give you a reference, but the top picture is actually in the Grand Canyon. So that does look like the two front paws and legs of the Sphinx.
Look behind it. It looks like the head has fell over back behind it or something. That looks like a head, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Right up there. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. And the Sphinx, according to what they think, actually the first Sphinx had a head of a lion and it got recarved into a pharaoh's. That could be a lion head that's laying up there. It does look similar to that. I'd love to see an aerial shot of that and see what it looks like.
Yep.
Because it stands to reason if it, time or river or all that would wash it, it would have fell over backwards or something, and landed on that plateau behind him.
Right.
Now, what's this? The park or something that they're in?
This is still the Grand Canyon. And just like the pyramids in Giza that align with Orion's belt, so do these temples or these mounds that they named after Egyptian names. They line up with the constellation of Orion in the belt also.
Yeah, that's perfectly. You can see that perfectly there. Yeah. And isn't that constellation is also connected to some of the pyramids, right? In Egypt.
Right.
Yeah, you got a lot of telltale clues here, Gerald. That's kind of pointing that way. Is that look there? That looks sort of like a petroglyph on a horse or something there. And of course, horses were introduced by the Spaniards to America, but they used to be here, but they died out. Horses did many eons before the. That looks kind of like a petroglyph of a horse on that hill. Maybe that's just me. But anyway. That's strange. But now, the horse was not here until the conquistadors brought them over. That's why I told you about the Sioux. They don't have a name for a horse. They call it a big dog.
Right.
And if you ride a horse, you're a dog soldier. Okay. The big dog. Here's my big dog.
So here's the...
if you're a horseman, you're a dog man.
That's right.
There you go. Uh-huh.
So here's in Hinckley, Ohio. Here's the Sphinx that was found in America, other than the one that we just showed that could be possibly in the Grand Canyon. This is actually in Ohio.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one the Boy Scouts found, supposedly, I think. Yeah. But look at that, boy. Look at that. You can see the leg. I mean, how could you not say that's what that is?
Right.
It kind of reminds me of that dragon Jessica supposedly found out in Alabama. The guy says you could, you move the undergrowth and everything, and look down, you could see it looked like a dragon, sleeping dragon,
Yep.
That right there you wouldn't guess at it. Look at it. My gosh. Look at the hind legs on it. The front paws.
Here, let me
the whole thing. Let
me make that bigger.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could be that they say the original legend of the Sphinx, Gerald, was that it had a woman's head, by the way, and it had a lion's body, and it was actually living on the road to Athens, Greece, and it would stop you on the road and give you a riddle, and if you didn't give the correct answer to the riddle, the Sphinx would eat you up.
Oh.
And the riddle is this, by the way, folks. Here's the riddle. What goes on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening?
Oh.
That's man. Because when he's little, he crawls on all 4s. When he's a man, he walks on 2 legs. When he's old, he carries a cane. That's 3 legs.
Right.
If you didn't come up with that, the Sphinx would eat you. That's it. Hercules solved that riddle, by the way. So he captured the Sphinx. But anyway, now that riddle I just gave you is about 6,000 years old. Okay.
Wow.
Thank you for. But anyway, that's interesting. But yeah, she originally had the head of a woman, supposedly. And I think just recently, Gerald, if I'm not mistaken, did they not find a smaller Sphinx in Egypt?
I think there
In
is
the
a
Valley of the
smaller.
King. I think it's in the Valley of the Kings, I think.
I
That's
think
kind
there
of the
is.
Sphinx there, yeah. Sort of like the Sphinx.
Yeah, this is in St. Louis, actually, on top of a building. So why would they have a Sphinx looking?
That looks like a Greek Sphinx kind of a thing. Look at the Greek
Well,
helmet.
to
Yeah.
me, it looks like Egyptian and maybe a cross of something else. But if you look at the straight on picture of it, I mean, definitely has the paws and the statue looking of a Sphinx. And
there used to be a legend about the Sphinx. It was buried up to its neck in the sand for many, many centuries. Okay. Only the head was sticking up out of the sand. And you could go there and walk up to the head and whisper in the Sphinx's ear to tell you what your future was. And if you put your ear to his lips, he supposedly would tell you. And they call that I've been there. And you were a world traveler, you would brag, I've been there to whisper to the Sphinx.
Wow. Now, supposedly when Napoleon came to Egypt, the Sphinx was almost all the way covered up to the neck.
Yeah, but now that's a legend about him shooting the nose off with a cannon. That never happened. He was actually a preserver of artifacts and stuff. He did not let his men mess with stuff, tear things up and all that. He kind of respected them. Matter of fact, he stole a lot of Egyptian artifacts too. Yeah, everybody was stealing from Egypt, folks. No wonder they want their stuff back. Okay, Egypt called. He wants his stuff back.
Matter of fact, I think some of the stuff is in the British Museum and French museums that what he took
and
off.
German and French and English museums have them all. Yeah. Hitler stole a lot of stuff too. Hitler was bad about stealing stuff too. Yeah.
Then they say, well, we won't give it back. So then Egypt says, well, we'll just loan it to you then.
Well, that's what they said. Somebody said that the other day. I was reading that in an archaeology magazine. They said that they want that stuff back on loan, and then they'll forget to give it back. Smart idea. Okay. They say aliens were here first, then the Lyrians, followed by reptilians. Yeah, you're getting into the alien thing there, Damien. Absolutely. Yeah. But well, there's according to what I said earlier, a big connection with Egypt and Atlantis as well. Supposedly, Egypt has been around a long, long, long time.
All right.
Yeah. But it just does not seem like it's that far-fetched to me they could not have gotten here to America. I mean, if you started sailing, you're going to hit America sooner or later. You're going to hit it no matter which way you go. You're going straight, And usually you use the stars to steer straight on the ocean, okay? How could you miss America, okay? Think about it. It makes sense. But I think, and it's been proven. You remember the story of the Kon-Tiki? You remember that, girl?
No, I don't think I do.
That was a boat they built to prove that the Polynesian people could, went to Hawaii and it proved to be seaworthy ship, the Kon-Tiki.
Oh.
So they proved that theory without doubt. And if the Polynesian people could do that, why not the Egyptians? Think about it, folks.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Damon, you're getting into the avians and the Lyrians and all, and the Anunnaki and all that stuff. Yeah, supposedly the alien species that have been on this planet. They all would have ended up in Egypt sooner or later. No doubt. I've heard stories of the relics that were taken that have tremendous voodoo and terrible consequences. Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to tell you something about ancient relics and stuff like that, folks. I'm going to say they don't only have a history patina about them, but they can also, especially if they were involved in very dark stuff, they can have a definite bad aura to them. Okay.
Oh,
And the reason I tell you that, there's a very famous case called I think it's called the Wessex heads. They were three or four heads, carved heads out of stone, sandstone. Sandstone's good to carve on, okay?
right.
And they were found in this guy's backyard.
Huh.
And he dug them up in England. And they were, about like maybe doll's heads. They weren't real big. And he brought those things in the house and put them on display and said that's when weird stuff started happening. Weird, crazy stuff.
Really?
It was like paranormal activity and all that. And he went and reburied them things and everything stopped.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, Danette, dear, for that $9.99 sticker.
Yes,
Thank
thanks,
you, dear.
Danette.
Appreciate that, Danette. She's a great supporter. Absolutely. But yeah, he buried them back. So that's enough of this. He even saw shadow figures in his house and all kind of weird stuff. And I think it was even something like a werewolf or something. I don't know. He saw
Oh,
weird stuff. And he reburied those things in the backyard where he found them, and everything completely stopped. And he said he's had several people come. Let's dig them back up and see. So no, I'm gonna leave them right where they. I'm not
oh,
messing with them anymore. So you have to be careful about those relics, folks. Definitely.
wow.
I actually have 4 carved heads sitting right on this shelf right up here, Jerry. You can't
Really?
see them. They were actually made out of Egyptian mud from the Nile.
Wow.
And whoever did them did a good job with them.
I did not know that.
They're not haunted, though, as far as I know. They haven't been moved around or nothing. But that's wild. And it's very strange looking mud. It's almost like clay. I mean, in that respect. It is clay, sort of, from the Nile. But the Nile was and I would think they would mention that, like on that rock I told you about, because the Nile played a very big, important part in the life of Egypt and the Egyptians. So they would definitely commemorate something like that. But there has supposedly been some other artifacts that have been found over the years. I think there's one I can't remember. You might be familiar with this, Gerald. It looks like the sacred cow that has the sundial between its horns. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
That carving of that was found in Iowa, somewhere like that, wasn't it?
I don't know that. I know I think I remember the symbol that you're talking about, but I didn't know it was in Iowa.
I think it's Iowa, Kansas, somewhere like that out west. I forget exactly where, but anyway, I remember looking at that. I said, "Yeah, gosh, that does look Egyptian." You know, that's very strange, especially the sundial being in the middle. The sundial, by the way, is not the one that keeps time, folks. The sundial was a commemorative of Apollo, the sun god, like who had a different name in Egyptology. I can't think of his name, but he was Amun Ra. Basically, that was his real name, the sun god. That was his symbol. The sun disk actually was a disk. Might have had a movie on it. Gerald, we ever try that? We need to pop that in a machine and see if that disc got a movie on it.
Have I ever showed you this also? All the names or some of the names, not I didn't get all of them down. They're named after Egypt, like Cairo, Illinois, Cairo, Georgia, Cairo, Nebraska,
Uh-huh.
New York, Ohio, Virginia, Memphis, Tennessee, Texas, Missouri, Michigan, Alexandria, Virginia, Louisiana, Thebes, Illinois, New York, Luxor. I mean, there's all kinds of names.
Karnak is a very famous place in Egypt. That's amazing. Yeah, people had Egypt on their mind, didn't they?
And almost every one of these is in Illinois also.
Yeah.
So it's weird that we have so many cities named after Egyptian cities or places.
And then you have that whole section called Little Egypt, you know.
Yeah.
We used to have a place in the town where I lived in. It was called Little Texas, but it was mostly a couple of beer joints. Where you been tonight? I've been hanging out in Little Texas. Okay. It was like 2 or 3 beer joints in one group there, or something like that. But anyway. But that actually, I had forgotten about that movie, Little Egypt, with Edward G. Robinson. Yeah, that was a great one. You know, Edward G. Robinson actually went to Egypt. Remember, he was in the Ten Commandments. He was
Right.
Egyptian overseer in that. Yeah. He could be a slimy guy when he wanted to. He really, he could really be a bad guy. Good. He was good at that.
No, I think I've brought this up before about a Egyptian mummies that they tested their DNA samples and found cocaine and nicotine. Now, if they didn't travel here or have a trade route to South America and some in North America, how did they get DNA or samples in their blood?
Well, supposedly they found traces of tobacco and cocaine, which could only come from the New World in these supposed tombs. But there is a thing about there was a form of a tobacco plant like that the Egyptians knew about. And that may be what they were talking about on that, but that's very strange.
Well, from when I read the story, it talked like it can only come from North and South America. The samples they took.
Here's another thing for you to think about, Gerald. A bunch of the mummies have what? Red hair. Where did that come from?
Vikings, giants.
Nephilim? Yeah. That makes you wonder about that. Really, a bunch of them. I have seen several photographs of female mummies that they had red hair. I mean, honest to God, it was red hair. And that's the interesting thing about hair. Your body can go away to nothing, but your hair remains. That's amazing to think about. If it's kept well, it doesn't go away. It could last for thousands of years, folks. And
wow.
I actually seen the mummy of a young Egyptian prince, and he had a side lock. Remember the side lock that they would have on the side of their head? And his side lock was still there with the gold bands in it from 6,000 years ago. Amazing.
Wow.
His face was gone and everything. Everything was gone, but that lock of hair was still there. But they had what it was called, kind of a ponytail on the side, like side lock it was called. And the young princes and princesses wore that. They would shave their head, except for that.
Right. That was for hygiene, though, right?
The Egyptian mounds. It looks interesting.
Yeah, so this is in tied with
it's in Tennessee.
Tennessee Energy Company and Knoxville Mounds, or the Cox Mounds. And you can also look up Norris Dam, because they discovered these temples, or these what would have been temples or mounds that they say is Egyptian, and they found artifacts there. And especially the one in Norris, where they put Norris Lake, they dammed it up after they found this, and they went ahead with their plans and flooded the whole valley where that was.
That's amazing. It looks, I just looking some of it, kind of looks like an obelisk. That one in the center there, doesn't it?
Well, I think those were
It-
pyramids, or
yeah.
the pillars to hold up the structure, kind of like the Pantheon, or
Oh
stuff like
yeah,
that.
stone pillars. Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, the
the guy.
Tennessee Valley Authority just went ahead and just dismissed the archaeology found, and went ahead with plans and dammed up the valley and flooded it. So it's all underneath the Norris Lake now.
Oh really? That's a shame. The guy that supposedly found that stuff in the Grand Canyon said that there were pillars, carved pillars in that cave that was holding the cave up or something. And there were huge statues of pharaohs. So, if you see those in Egypt, folks, they're usually sitting on their throne,
Right.
depiction. And it looked very much like that. That kind of reminds me of what the Egyptian tombs look like a little bit on the inside, without the walls, of course. It kind of looks like that. And look at that part in the middle there, that raised up part.
Yep.
That's interesting. Sort of like a platform, isn't it? And then you got the standing stones. Look at those standing stones, kind of like Stonehenge.
Right.
Yes, I mean that's sort of an observatory type looking thing, isn't it? Ancient temple. It looks very Egyptian in the way it's
It
laid
does.
out, more so than the Mesoamerican temples. Like I said, those the Aztec temples were a whole completely different structure. We call them pyramids, but they're not really the exact same thing.
So the Tennessee Authority, or public, their energy, they covered up an Egyptian temple, but then when they went to have their World's Fair, guess what they did? They said they built pyramids for the World's Fair.
Oh yeah, are they still there?
I think the pyramid's still there, but I'm not 100% positive. These are all pictures from the World's Fair in 1897. So how do you go from celebrating the Egyptian culture in North America in 1897, then later on they find an actual Egyptian mound or a temple, then they cover it up and don't care about it?
Yeah, as you go through that much trouble to build something like that, it'd be a shame to tear it down. I'd leave it up. That's amazing. Very Egyptian looking, definitely. Now, see, that's the big difference in that and the Aztec pyramids. By the way, the Aztec pyramid is built like steps, and the reason that is built that way, Gerald, these steps. That's the Parthenon. That's in Tennessee, I think. The steps of the Aztec temples were actually leading up to heaven, and they would take you to the very top platform to cut your heart out next to where the gods were. You were sacrificed to the gods. They got you as close to the gods as possible when they cut your heart out, and that's why the blood would run down those steps, supposedly, and all that. And one temple that they dedicated in one week, this new temple, they killed over 30,000 people, cut out their hearts. Think about that, Joe.
Right.
That's a lot of heart, buddy. A lot of blood going down those steps, definitely. That would have been a sight, would it not?
Right.
What we got here? Sort
This is
of
the World's
the
Fair in Nashville still, the pyramid and the Parthenon, and they had it all lit up at night in 1897.
there is a Parthenon in Tennessee. That you can go see to this day. I mean, it's there. I don't know about that. If that's still there, dude, I don't know. What
Yeah,
river is that?
I don't know if like the Chicago's World Fair, if certain buildings are still standing and other ones they tore down.
That's the Chicago River, right?
No, this is in Nashville World's Fair. This is
Oh,
what they
that's
built.
Nashville. Oh, Well, that's near Tennessee. Okay, well, the Parthenon's still there. I don't know about the pyramid, but the Parthenon is still there.
Yeah, so this was all built for the World's Fair in 1897.
Yeah, but I don't remember the pyramid being there. Maybe I don't think the pyramid's still there. I don't know. I know the Parthenon is because I saw it. If that's the same one, you know. But you know, here's another something for you folks. There's another Parthenon, not besides the one in Greece and the one in Tennessee. There's another one in Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland, by the way, on a hill.
Oh,
there. Yeah, very famous building. It gets redone every now and then. You know what, though, Gerald? We were talking about that, you know, before the show. There is definitely a connection with some of this stuff in Tartaria and the mud floods and all that, you know?
right. Definitely a big Egyptian culture in North America and especially the United States, whether it was intentional as far as being here before, but we definitely celebrated a lot in our culture for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, here's the thing about architecture, Gerald. The thing about architecture is it can influence cultures, you know, to build certain things, just like the Parthenon there that you see. The columns, they're replicated all over Washington, D.C., by the way, you know?
Right.
Architecture becomes part of our culture. Whether we realize it or not, it gets passed down through centuries too, you know?
Yeah.
That's the light pyramid right there. It's got the lights on it. Somehow or another, I don't think those ancient Egyptian pyramids were wired for light, Gerald.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Well, I don't know. I mean, we got the Egyptian battery, the
yeah, they could have. Yeah, never know.
And a lot of people say that the pyramids look like they could have been like a nuclear reactor, like it has the wear and tear of like a nuclear reactor has on the inside from chemicals in the chambers. They think that's what the pyramids look like too.
Tesla believed that they were wireless energy receptors. And if they were, you could definitely put a string of lights up on them if you wanted to. It wouldn't be any problem. Built by donkey power. Those donkeys got one. That's that reminds me of that Steve Martin song, you know, King Tut, you know.
Yep.
Married to a donkey. Yep. He's my favorite honky.
Born in Babylonia.
Yep. Moved to Arizona.
Yeah, I love that song.
He is a wild and crazy guy. Definitely. My favorite part of that said if I had known he paid us money to see him, I'd have had my own museum.
Yeah. Right.
Now, when I die, I don't think that I'm a nut. Don't want no fancy funeral, just one like old King Tut. Hello, Alexander. Good to have you here. Yeah, it's amazing to think about, you know. But here's the big question: why? Okay. Well, the first thing that ever hit my brain when I first saw the pyramids, okay, why? Why would you build it? You know, as huge as this thing was, there's much trouble you had to go through to build this thing. Why would you? You know, it was just going to sit there. Were they doing this for posterity? They knew it would last forever. You know, we talked about that on the show we did, you know, with the 7 wonders of the ancient world, you know.
Right.
One of them is definitely still here with us. It's amazing. Now, why would you do that?
I guess I guess it's one of the easiest buildings, as far as structures and stable that you can build. I don't know.
I could see me landing my flying saucer right on the tip of that pyramid, girl, and fueling
Oh,
up.
that,
Yeah,
that's been a lot of movies.
yeah. Freedom Lover said, "Love is the constant frequency." Was the message, huh? The message you got from the pyramids.
Oh, nice.
Pyramids are like orgone pyramids. They shoot energy up. Well, according to Tesla, he thought they were definitely perfect receptacle for wireless energy. He even went so far, I think, to build one in New Jersey or someplace like that. He was building one to. I think he was in the process of going to do it before he died or whatever, passed before he got the chance to do it. But he was wanting to build one and experiment with that. If
Yeah.
you look at the pyramid, it is perfectly designed, geometrically or something like that, definitely. It looks like a Doppler radar on top of that.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be a building that has Egyptian inscriptions and stuff on it, and the top kind of looks like the Dome of the Rock kind of dome that they use over in Egypt and Middle East.
Well, the minarets, as they are called, something like that, are very Arabian. They are definitely probably influenced by Egyptian architecture,
So if you look on
Persian
the
stuff.
side, you look on the side of this building, you start to see carvings.
Yep. How come we don't build buildings like that anymore?
Well, I don't know about building them like that anymore, but why would you put this stuff on your building?
Very Gothic, girl. There is Gothic architecture, and there's different types of architecture. I've studied them over the years. I find architecture fascinating. Um, Different types. You got Gothic, you got Romance, you got Victorian, so on and on. Every culture has its own architecture. And some of these cultures go back and borrow stuff from ancient cultures, like that right there, for their architecture. But that was back in the day when they really knew how to build stuff. They really had not craftsmen, but artisans. You know what I mean? Could you
Right.
imagine? Could you imagine what work that took hanging off the side of that building to carve that in there? And even if you put it up there, it's already pre-carved, and you put it up there, that's still a lot of work. Think about it.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
like
if
that a
you
lot.
if you believe we actually built these buildings, then yeah, I mean that's a heck of a craftsmanship.
Well, that's where you get a
But
lot of that Tartarian stuff. The Tartarian stuff was very elaborate like that.
well, there's a culture out there now that believes that we are in a little season, and that the Tartarian buildings that we talk about and all the free energy and these buildings, like no man could have probably built these buildings, as magnificent as they are, that was actually the millennial reign, and we are now in the little season. That's why the world is so evil. And
Well, also, there's theory that that ancient peoples were not like us. They were bigger, stronger, better, and smarter than we are. As every generation goes, supposedly down the line, it gets weaker and a little bit less smart. It gets, it's just almost as if the God particle is wearing out on us. You know what I'm saying? But at the beginning, they were bigger, smarter, stronger. They lived, what, 900 years? Think about that a minute.
right.
That was an extraordinary person, like Methuselah, could live that long. You're talking about super people here, folks, a super race of people. And if they had giants among them that were causing all that trouble like we think they did, you had a completely different society and system working here.
Oh,
You could build stuff like that. There's an ancient legend, Gerald, that the Cyclops, the Cyclops, the one with the giant with the one eye,
right.
that they were a race of giants they were perfect craftsmen at building walls and fortresses. And that's what they were born by made by the gods to do this. That would explain some of these building blocks and all that. Giants could lift them up and put them in place, and carving and all this stuff. You got to wonder about that,
Right.
Adam to Abraham, huh?
Yeah. So Adam,
See
Adam
how it starts out. It starts out with Adam, 930 years, so on, so on. No, I mean, 930 years. It starts and it slowly dissipates as time goes on, little bit by little bit by little bit. Each generation, and the Bible says that each generation shall be weaker and wiser.
Right.
In other words, they lose this God particle thing they got going, or whatever you want to call it. They were closer to their creator, so they were made better.
The thing I like about this chart is that it shows not only how long they lived, but when they lived. So Adam was alive when Jared and Enoch was alive, and Methuselah was alive, and Lamech was alive. So they could have talked to Adam to find out what God was like, what the Garden of Eden was like, and they could have had all this first-hand
information. Died the year of the flood, because the Bible specifically says that. Methuselah died the year of the flood. So they had these generations before them that they still interacted with. You're very right in that. Like Methuselah could have talked to his grandpa Adam. It's not that big of a time difference between them. Take a look.
Right.
Adam was 930 years. Methuselah was what? 969 years. So you're right. He was alive and Adam was alive.
Yep. So he could, all those generations could have firsthand knowledge of what happened in the Garden of Eden and what the relationship with God and what happened after the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, they had interaction.
Right. And then assuming those people were alive when Noah and the flood took place. So Noah would have had all that information all the way from Adam all the way down to him.
Well, he knew Lamech was alive when Noah was alive.
Yep, Noah and Methuselah was alive when Noah. So they could have passed on all that information to Noah.
And Moses would be in there somewhere. They need to put Moses in there.
Yeah.
Moses would have been in there, what? Somewhere after Abraham. He could have interacted with Abraham. That's a possibility. Right. Go look that up. I have to look that up.
But everybody after Noah, after the flood, would have had all the information that Noah got from Methuselah or Lamech all the way up to Adam. So Noah would have been able to orally carry it down to Shem and all the way down to Nahor and all the way down to Abraham. So they would have all had basically first or second-hand knowledge of everything that happened biblically.
Enoch, of course, supposedly wrote a lot of that down too, by the way. He kept records of it, supposedly. Enoch, of course, walked with God and then was not. God took him. Right. He supposedly never died.
Yeah.
For that. Anyway, he supposedly had records, and these records were in a pillar, like. I have to go back and look it up. Gary Wayne talks a lot about that in his book, The Genesis of the Project. Gary Wayne talks a lot about that. I got to get him on my show one night. That would be an interesting show.
There you go.
I have to get Gary Wayne on there, definitely. I've read his books. Fascinating stuff. Have you ever read them, Joe?
No, I have not.
Yeah, check them out, brother. It's very interesting stuff. You would find it very interesting, definitely. There's a lot of contention about if the giants all died in the flood, why are there still giants afterwards? But I think I have the answer for that.
Oh,
And Gary Wayne may be too. I'd have to go back and check. Maybe people listening tonight knows more about that. But I think it may have come through the DNA of one of Noah's son's wives.
ah,
Mm-hmm. Because the main reason why God wiped everybody out with flood was the Nephilim. They screwed up the whole world.
wow. That's possible.
But, you know, people ask me, why you hadn't giants before the flood, and you got giants after. Matter of fact, you got more giants after the flood. They're all about than you do before the flood. Where did that come from? It had to be DNA, folks, because nobody survived the flood, supposedly. And there's been theories that, you know, some of the giants held on to the boat while
Yeah.
while I was rolling around. I don't think that happened. But anyway, that would be the only way you could explain that, because the Nephilim screwed up the DNA of mankind. That's why the fallen angels did that. What they did, it was not just because they wanted to get with women. That was a benefit, but they wanted to. It was their plan to screw up God's creation, right, Drew?
Yep.
And what do you do that with? You screw up the creation. That means us and animals. It wasn't just us. The animals were not doing right. The animals got changed. Okay, and you know when the garden flood, I've had people ask me this too. The incident in the garden when the serpent got Eve to do what she did, and sin was introduced to man and a woman. Why did it affect the animals? Up until that point, lions were eating stuff in the field. Nobody was eating anybody. Everybody was living off vegetables, vegetation, and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, when Eve and Adam fell, everything changed, folks. Everything completely changed. The world itself changed. It's
Right.
almost like going into another dimension, right, Drew?
Yeah, I think when the original sin happened, I think God unlocked our DNA so it can be changed and modified.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, and I think that's where you get a lot of cryptids at. That's my personal theory. That's where a lot of cryptids come from. You get clues to that in the Bible. Look at Esau. He was born with all that hair on him.
Right.
Mankind's DNA was screwed up. Only one people was unblemished by this DNA. And who was that, Joe? The Jewish people, the Hebrews. They were preserved from it. That's why you go from Jesus all the way back to Adam without any problems. See what I'm saying?
Right.
You got that genetic line running all the way back. You had to have that because everybody else, the so-called Gentiles, were all screwed up by fallen angel blood, Nephilim blood. But the people of God were kept pure from that. That's why he picked out certain people to stay pure. Only marry the Jewish people. That was it.
I would have to say
that was canonical law. That was canonical law for the Jews. You could not marry anything outside of your people. That was it.
Right. I'd have
Some
to
of them violated that, though. Look at Solomon. He did that. Solomon screwed that up. He paid a price for it, though. He paid a price, and so did David. They didn't do the will of God. They got outside the will of God. But we're not getting into that now. That's a long story. But anyway, that's what happened with the Nephilim and all that stuff. But that would explain a lot of this. What if these guys were bigger, super strong guys? They could pick up blocks like that and do what they wanted to, and carve rocks and stuff. They could make pyramids a whole lot easier than mere mortal men could.
Right.
Like you have modern man today could not do that. It would make a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yep.
I could see, the Egyptian guy said, "Okay, we got the capstone back. I call in the Giants. Okay, that's how I'm gonna be. Call the Giant team in. Get to set it up for us here." Casey said there was a war against the Giants and they went underground. Would not surprise me a bit if that, because if I were going to hide, that's where I'd go. Absolutely. And there's a lot of clues point to that as well. Our lifespans naturally would be 200 to 300 years, plus easy if our telomeres were not being shortened by the Draco Anunnaki faction. Well, I think we've been genetically engineered, all right, but I don't think it was the Anunnaki. I think the real Anunnaki were fallen angels. But that's my theory. But architecture remains, Gerald. It passes down through generations. I think it's almost like a racial memory for these guys, It stays there. It makes sense when you think about it.
Well,
but
I'm
I
starting.
feel without a doubt, it's just not that far fetched. And ancient peoples could not have had interaction. We have found, they have even recently found American Indian DNA in Scandinavia.
Oh.
So some Viking got him an Indian gal for a wife and brought her home. They found that. DNA tells a lot of the clues there, folks, definitely. Actually, the Vikings, I don't know, a lot of people don't realize this. Vikings were supreme slave traders, okay? When they robbed your village, they took you too and sold you into slavery. They made a lot of money off of that. And they would sell slaves as far south as Arabia. You could buy white women there, real cheap, on the Arabian market. Oh yeah. So the Viking slave traders went along. They knew about Arabians. They knew about Arabs. They dealt with them. They had transactions with them. And that's not that far fetched. They couldn't go down the Rhine and into the Middle East. No problem. So if you were a Viking trader, you say, "Well, I got me 20 women on board here, and I can make me a killing on this. So I go down and sell them to the Arabians here." And if they didn't want to use them for children, they would put them in the fields and work them. And the men were, some of them were from childhood trained to be Vikings and warriors and stuff. But they had a very strange slave system.
Right.
Yeah. You were a vassal. That's where that old word vassal comes from. You wore an iron collar that showed you were a slave.
Oh.
Fallen angels adopt many costumes and names around history. Absolutely, Nathan. They're good at that. They're very deceiving type guys. They're very good at that. Stories about the Arabian culture. Yeah, that's a story for another time there. Freedom Lover. But they were big, and the Arabians were big into slavery. They were selling most of the people in Africa, the black people in Africa, that's into slavery. They were big slave traders. But here's the story on that: the different tribes would raid each other, just like the American Indian tribes did. All of this land, they were not living in peace with each other. Okay, nobody ever was living in peace with anybody. Okay, nobody was, and the African tribes would raid each other and capture that tribe and sell them to the Arabians. Okay, everybody was making money off of this, folks. Okay, so nobody on this planet has a moratorium on slavery. Okay, everybody's been somebody's slave at one time or another. That's just the way that goes. But you never hear about that in the history class. M33 says Arabian slavery was some of the worst in the world. Not enough people to talk about it, but those who study and do their research know. Yeah, it was they had a very big, large slave network, and they was going strong into the 18th century. They was selling slaves to the American South, and to the American North. There was the big slave traders were in the North, past the Mason-Dixon line. They sold them to the South. Everybody was making money, folks. That's the way it went. Uh, Nobody has clean hands in this story, all right? Everybody was into something. And the funny thing about it, more slaves were brought to this country under the American flag than ever was the Confederate flag. That's another part of history they don't talk about. So everybody had a hand in it. Absolutely. Some people smartened up. The British got smart about it. They quit. They quit and they said, "Hey, that's enough's enough." But it was too much tied into the economy. That's what it was. They had a hold on the economy, and another thing was the industrial age was just beginning. The industrial age was pushing out the farm age. The plantation age and all that it was doomed anyway. You know what I'm saying? It was doomed to go because the industrial age was coming up. But a lot of people never talk about in the North, there were big riots against being inducted into the army to fight the South. They did not want to do that. It was all politics, folks. Politics. That's what it's pure and simple. I found artifacts that are 3 different sizes of people in some material and modern patterns. Oh, yeah. Right now, if you buy off of the internet, I'll warn you now, okay? If you go on Facebook or something and buy a shirt off of there, you better know where it comes from, because if it's from China, you're not going to wear it, okay? Because they're a whole lot smaller than we are, all right? Trust me, if they're XXX large, is your XXX extra large, okay? That's just the way they work. And I've had a lot of people complain about, I bought this off Facebook, I can't wear it, I got an extra large, but it's like an extra small or something here. I said, no, that's their extra large, okay? Not yours. So beware of that, folks. When you go overseas to the Chinese sweatshops, everything's a different size. That's the way it goes in China.
Yep.
Every meaningless job you are forced to work is slavery. Absolutely. We are slaves no matter who we are, where we're at. From the cradle to the grave, my friend. We're slaves to the system. That's the real matrix. It ain't a computer program. The real matrix is the system. You are a slave to it with chains of iron that you cannot see. But you are a slave that will never be free. That's the way it goes. Well, Gerald, this has been fascinating stuff, man. You got any more pictures left, or is that it?
No, that's about it. I'm sure there's probably more somewhere, but that's all I had available for right now.
All right. Well, this has been good. It was a very interesting subject tonight. Yeah. What's your final take on it, there, bud?
I think one way or another, if the Egyptians weren't here, they definitely had travel to North and South America, and somehow the trade route either brought the Egyptians here or other explorers brought artifacts and stuff to here from Egypt and trade it for whatever spices, whatever we had that they needed. But looking at the Grand Canyon, in Tennessee and all these artifacts, I think there was a culture here, some form or one way or another.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. It's not that far fetched, and but there again, there's science turning a blind eye when it's got the facts right there in front of it, but doesn't want to admit it.
Right.
That's the way it goes. you got some hard-headed people in this world, right there. I mean, they just don't want to get out of the truth, slapping them in the face, and they're still denied. That's the way it
Well,
goes.
well, we got to be careful because a lot of times we think we know the truth, but we become hard-headed and unwilling to change ourselves. So we got to be careful and be open-minded.
Well, that's why it's a good idea to get more than one opinion from a doctor. You know what I mean? If he says one thing, you better go check 2 or 3 more times because that's just his opinion. He could be wrong. We can be wrong. That's just like, we talked about that before. We can be wrong about these things. That's a human equation. But just because, you're wrong, we don't need to shoot each other for it. And we certainly don't need to hate each other. If we disagree, we get the wrong idea, sometimes the wrong opinion. That's just being human. There's no excuse for that, but it's still being human. But
Right.
you're right. But science is that way. It's just not going to admit it's wrong. Even if it is, it's not going to admit it. But that's the way it goes. So you got to kind of overlook these things sometimes, folks. Definitely, you got to say, "Oh, that's them being them," and don't worry about it. But yeah, I agree with you completely, Gerald. There's definitely another story being told here that nobody wants to talk about. Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating story tonight, and you want to tell everybody what you got planned for the week coming up here? What you got cooking on the burners there?
Well, we got the Wednesday night Night Owl Lounge. I'm sure we'll be doing that and hanging out with everybody in the Midwest Night Watchers group and talking to them. And probably Friday, Saturday, we'll probably be doing movie night on our Rumble channel. So you got to go to our Rumble channel if you want to see these old sci-fi monster movies, paranormal movies, because YouTube don't like it when you share stuff like that. So we do it on our Rumble channel. And Sunday, we're going to have Brian Sawyer back, and he's Bigfoots in America or Bigfoots in Michigan, if you want to look him up. He has a YouTube channel, and I think we're going to be talking about thunderbirds and pterodactyls. And Dennis, do you want to go ahead and announce Monday night our change to our show and what's going on?
Well, yeah, we're going to be changing format here a little bit. We're going to retire Gerald finally here, folks. Nah, he's not ready to retire yet. But anyway, he's going to be stepping back. You want to tell him, what you plan on doing there, Gerald?
Yeah, nothing big and exciting. I'm just going to take a breather and step back and enjoy I figured October going into November and December would be a good time for a family and enjoying the fall and getting stuff done and concentrating a little more on our channel. And not that I'll be gone forever. Dennis can always have me back and I'll pop on for shows or guests. And I think, Dennis, you should take this platform, the Road Less Travel, and have other guests talking about weird stuff that they like.
Yeah, well, we'll see what occurs with that, definitely. But we'll definitely miss you. You've been my compadre for a long time. And but like I say, I'm not gonna let you off the hook that easy. Eventually, we might have you back as a guest, definitely from time to time. You never know, but appreciate everything you've done very much. You know that, and well, we always say we're brothers from other mothers.
Yeah.
And that's the way we are. But yeah, it's good to step back, enjoy life. Try to enjoy your family and do things you need to do once in a while. You need to concentrate on the more important things. Definitely in life. There's no problem with that. Absolutely not. But we wish you all the best, definitely. And we're not going to let you get too far away, okay? But
no, I'm sure I'll be back popping in. If I find something exciting I want to talk about, I'll let you know. We talk during the week anyway, almost constantly. So I'm sure one time or another I'll be popping back on and with something to talk about. So if you guys miss me, you know where to find me. Come over to Midwest Night Watchers. We'll still be there. And then eventually I'll probably start loosening up and coming back on and doing other shows again.
I might even pop in on this show once in a while.
That's
You never
right.
know. I might show up there. But we appreciate you, sir. We really do. And but thank you for that. And it's been a very interesting journey down the road less traveled, definitely. And
Yeah.
it was good to have you along with us for the ride. Absolutely. And
So Monday we might be doing a reminiscent and maybe questions and answers. What do you think, Dennis? Should we do that?
yeah, we'll have an open mic Monday for your
Yeah.
last show there. Definitely.
So
Yeah.
tell all
Do
your
that.
friends to show up, and maybe we'll give away some stickers and Midwest stuff in Dennis's channel,
Yeah,
Hunting the Shadow stickers or something for our last show.
yeah, come in and hang out with us. Definitely. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, Wednesday night, I'm going to be doing part two, by the way, on Hunting the Shadows. Part two on securing your spiritual safety. So that's going to be good. So tune in for that. And we'll be doing some hanging out Friday on Paranormal Point of View. And we will see you then Monday. And that happens, and we'll be hanging out then. And I hope all of you will show up. You never know what's going to happen. Nope, never do. But we might be even giving away stuff. Yeah, definitely. So we will see you then, and take care of yourselves. Hope you have a fantastic rest of the week. Don't do anything Gerald wouldn't do. If you do, don't get caught at it, okay? And that goes with me too. But anyway, we appreciate all of you being here tonight for your support. Definitely, absolutely fantastic support. Great chat, family. We have a great one, don't we?
Absolutely. Love everybody in chat.
Yep. And take care of yourselves. Hope you have a great week. We hope it's kind of a quiet week here, okay? We've been through some stuff here lately, but we hope it's quiet. But anyway, take care of yourselves till we get back together again. Remember Lux and Tenebus, light in darkness. And non tambo mala, fear no evil. That's a good one. That's one of my favorites. But until we get back together again, take care of yourselves. Godspeed. And we'll be looking for you somewhere out there in the shadows. Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.